right, so we are here and we welcome back today Mr. Barry Topping, the composer behind Thatchers Techbase, Encounters, which is a project based on Gundam, I believe. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
of
yeah.
course, Paradise Killer, the one and only legendary soundtrack there. So, Barry, I think I've only scratched the surface of who you are. So, could you tell us a bit about yourself? Who is Barry Topping?
Yeah, I'm a Scottish composer, sound designer, game developer. I started out playing guitar in high school and eventually decided I wanted to get into music as a career. And yeah, through many years of trying and hammering away at different projects, like writing for video games is something that's kind of stuck and something that I've spent the last 3 years doing and enjoying very much. And yeah, and I just really love to write, exciting game flavored music because I feel like video games are a space where you can do pretty much whatever you want. There's a lot of freedom, especially writing for indie games. You have a chance to put a much bigger stamp on it and put a lot more of your identity into it if it was a bigger, more expensive product.
And it seems like you're given a lot of liberty with it. You're sort of given the guidelines. This is what the game is, and then you work from there. Is that correct?
I always like to push, no matter what the guidelines are, I always like to try and push beyond them as much as possible. The kind of stuff that I find exciting is to write from a point of view of influences and try and combine those into something new and just to push it as much as possible. Like I'd say my music is fairly maximalist in a number of ways, but yeah, I like to, take any guidance I can and try and make it as exciting as I possibly can.
And so you mentioned taking your influences and sort of basing your music on that. Your music covers so much ground from, everything from Paradise Killer
Mm.
to Birdcage to Sentry, all of that stuff. Uh, what are some of your influences? And do the influences, are they sort of static, change over time?
They kind of do change over time. There are broader influences, like I grew up listening to metal, playing metal, and listening to a lot of video game music. It seems obvious that video game music would be an influence, right? But it definitely always has been, even since I was young, before I started playing guitar. I also I love 80s music. I love AOR. I love all pretty much most 70s stuff too. I've just always been a music lover in general, but I tend to, when we're talking project specific music, I tend to let the stuff that I'm listening to at the time influence it in certain ways. Even if it's an unrelated genre of music, I still find that, that there are little bits and pieces from whatever music I've been listening to at the time make it into that.
And so what were you listening to when you made Paradise Killer?
I'd got into maybe a couple of years before Paradise Killer, I'd started listening to a lot of future funk. And perhaps naively, I didn't realize that future funk is was mostly sample based, which is not that's not a comment about how, I love house music and that's all sample based. But I was like, God, I can't believe these people are making such expensive music. So I didn't really know what City Pop was in 2014 or something. So yeah, I think future funk is gradually what got me into City Pop. And around about the same time I was getting into City Pop, I was getting into a lot of like AOR. I've always been a big fan of Toto, and a natural progression from Toto for me was stuff like Steely Dan. And then, all the other stuff like always love prog rock as well. I feel like prog has quite a lot of overlap with video game music and stuff like city pop. So there's threads between every genre, I kind of feel, that have always made it easy for me to get into the different genres.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I first got into when I first started working on Paradise Killer stuff, I was listening to a lot of city pop, and it just kind of happened that it linked up with what they were looking for. Because in 2019, I'd written a synthwave album because I was just really into synthwave at the time. And that was something I'd got into through being obsessed with new disco for like 4 years, like new disco, disco house. It really felt like quite new at the time when I got into it. And that's what was exciting about City Pop as well. I hadn't really heard any of it before, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of albums. And yeah, it just went from there. It's when you find one thing that you like, and you can then go and find another 100 similar things. It's great. It's so easy to find good music. It's Crazy.
Yeah, and you mentioned Steely Dan, Toto. So you seem
Yeah.
like a man of yacht rock style tastes.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I love any instrumentation that's based around keyboards or synthesizers, especially. And like Toto are a great sort of synthesizer archetype band. They always like I think it's because synthesizer music just makes me think of video game music. Like when I was getting into Toto, for example, they had like two keyboard players and like Steve Porcaro and David Paich are really different types of players, and they had really different sound palettes that they were using in Toto songs. And Steve Lukather wrote a lot of stuff with guitar harmonies, and I love guitar harmonies because I love Iron Maiden. But all that stuff, like it also sits within video games throughout different times of video games history. So yeah, I mean, if anything sounds even tangentially like video game music, I tend to always love it. So I'm not saying that Steely Dan per se sounds like video game music, but and there's a sort of inevitability I think about getting into the Dan. I think you just have to listen to the right combination of stuff, and then Steely Dan unfolds itself to you, and you can be like, ah, yes, I see.
I get that, and I'm honestly infinitely curious if they produced a video game, what it would sound like. So that sort of that's going to linger in the back of my mind for the rest
Uh,
of the month, man.
I can imagine Walter Becker being a guy that would have got into video games, but Donald Fagen seems way too cynical to ever play a video game. I feel
Oh
like
God, yeah.
pressing a button to make a man jump on a TV screen that's not Donald Fagen's thing at all. But
No, it'd be much more dark and bleak, I think.
yeah, you never know though. I mean, you never know. A lot like, people love vanity hires. And if I had enough money, Donald Fagen would be pretty high up my vanity hire list. Yeah, get him into co-write a tune for a video game. Why not?
That would be something. If you could do that, I would applaud you. My God, man.
I know, I know.
Um,
I would just, if I had a AAA budget, I'm pretty sure I could change the face of video game music forever. But exactly.
um, and so I know frequently you're referred to as Epoch, so I am curious, what is the background behind taking on that name?
It was just an artist name I had. It came from the Time Machine and Chrono Trigger because at the time I was playing in a lot of bands when I was younger, and I wanted to have a name to sort of differentiate my solo stuff from the stuff that I was doing in bands. And it was just a name that I liked. I think if I could go back, I would start off by using my full proper name. But I don't really like my name. Not a big fan, so it was never high on my list of what I wanted to do. But now I have to go by Barry Epoch Topping for the rest of my life because there are people who only know I exist on Spotify, so they don't really know my real name. So I've created a bit of a situation there. But there are a lot of composers that write under an artist name and then gradually move to their full name. So
Hmm.
we'll see. We'll
I'll
see
think
what the
of
future holds.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
don't think there's a lot of stuff on Spotify under The Rock, but actually, what's that tune? It doesn't matter. Remember that tune? Is it
Oh,
Wyclef Jean and The Rock? Oh,
I'm not sure about that. I remember him from Moana. He sang that song in that animated film. What can I
it
say
doesn't.
except you're welcome?
Well, let's do it right. Okay, so he's in Wyclef Jean. It doesn't matter. Wyclef
Okay.
Jean, The Rock, Melchizedek. So he's listed as The Rock on Spotify. So we click his name, it takes us through to a completely unrelated artist called The Rock. So
That's
there
a
you go.
different
Even The
artist.
Rock has
Nobody
naming
is
issues
safe.
on. I mean, yeah, he's The Rock, and he's having these issues. So it happens.
Uh, well, at least Epoch is unique. We'll
Yeah,
say
I
that.
mean, it's not. There's about 20 epochs out there.
Ah,
I've risen to the top of the like in Jet Li's the one. I have become the one. So
you're the top Epoch.
yeah, pretty much. And there's nothing I can do about it. But I'd like to think if I was one of the bottom rated epochs, I'd have the sort of consciousness to say maybe I should get another name. But we'll see.
Fair enough, but you're at the top, so don't worry about it. Um, so you mentioned your old bands. Are you talking bands like Amid Concrete and Callousness?
Yeah, bands like that, like it's quite a narrow process in Scotland to be in a band and to try and achieve success because you can't go to 20 cities and play in bars because we only have three, four cities that actually have places you can play. And even then, you need to, jump through a lot of hoops
Hmm.
to get repeat bookings. Basically, promoters are only interested in you if you can sell tickets. So yeah, I mean, I was in a lot of like cool bands when I was younger, but it was impossible to ever do anything
Right.
because they're just like, oh, if you want to be big, if you want to play at this festival, you have to go and record at this guy's studio. And it's like when you're 19, you don't have £5,000 to spend on like making an EP, right?
Oh, it's a challenge.
So
You
I
got to
was in
know the
a
right people.
definitely. So yeah, I was in a lot of cool bands, but yeah, we never really got to do too much that was exciting.
Well, I will say I did go back and listen to ACAC, I think it would be the
Excellent.
acronym. Yeah, it was good stuff. It was
I
fun. It was
think
very much like
for the
my
time, I think we were doing really cool stuff, honestly.
yeah.
Because again, it was just the stuff we were listening to at the time, like, Coheed and Cambria and Thrice and stuff like that. But we were just filling it full of keyboards because we all liked video games. So
And I mean that was about the time I grew up too. So like that's the same sort of music I was listening to. So when I heard it for the first time, I was like, oh wow, okay.
yeah,
Would not expect that from Barry, but here we are.
yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very of the time, right? But yeah, I've been doing this for a while, so
Well, it's good stuff. I'd definitely recommend it to anybody who's listening to this. Now, over the years, you've mentioned your video game soundtracks, your own records, your own music, and stuff like that. And am I correct in that you had short films or animated films that you'd composed for previously?
yeah, I've worked on some shorts, which was always fun. I worked on a short called The Heist with a guy called Branko. I can't remember Branko's surname. It's terrible of me, but they showed it in Fortnite, like in a film festival. So I get to say that technically, for a limited time, my music was in Fortnite. So, which feels good,
It's pretty rad.
honestly. But
Yeah.
yeah, I know a lot of animators. So yeah, I've worked on a handful of animated shorts. It's good fun. It's not my preferred, like I write into visuals is difficult. It's like a
Right.
skill I had to learn, and it's not my preferred, but it nurtures sort of different creative results, which is fun.
Is it more structured, do you find? Because I mean, they would have the animation there. You'd have to watch it and put music to it.
Yeah,
So is
yeah. I
there?
mean, yeah, composing to an animatic is, I feel like you have to know where you're going. Because when I start writing a song, I never really know where it's going. But when you're writing to an animatic, normally because I'm quite structural and methodical about the way I think about stuff, is I tend to just look at the full animatic and cut it into sections and know like at this point I need to hit this, and at this point I need to hit this. And you can kind of write with a bit of freedom and then just like fudge the tempos around to hit certain points, but it never felt natural to me as much as I did enjoy it.
Right. No, fair enough. And I mean, working within the structure is always a little bit harder too, right? Just having to fit in those confines. And now,
Yeah, I mean, I know that I think in the 80s and the 90s, and there was a lot of I think they were just cutting tape to get stuff to sync. Like they were literally just cutting up tapes and sticking them together because I can't imagine how difficult it must have been doing that pre-computers, right?
yeah, oh, it's a challenge for
Yeah.
sure. And you go back and listen to those tracks from the 80s with just like the perfect harmonies and like the perfect cuts and all this stuff. It's
Yeah, yeah.
mind-blowing, incredible.
Yeah, we
Um,
have there's so much stuff we can do now because of technology because you could do it then, but it was budget, right? It was serious amounts of money and serious amounts of people.
You've done a lot of work. You've done Paradise Killer, you've done Birdcage and Sentry, and those definitely show your evolution and the trajectory at which your
Yeah.
musical career has been going. What lies in the future for you? What is next for Barry Topping?
Well, so Birdcage is a good example. A couple of years ago, I started a game development studio with a friend of mine, Yanis, who is a Greek comic book artist. He worked on stuff like Future State, Gotham, Ronan Island. He did some cyberpunk stuff as well. And like we've been friends for a couple of years, actually more than a couple, probably a while. We've been like acquaintances on Twitter, and we kind of found that our taste levels were very aligned, so we decided to try making a video game. So we're developing two games, Birdcage, which is a kind of it's a shoot 'em up, so it's inspired by a lot of classic shoot 'em ups, but it's also really inspired by stuff like Metal Gear Solid. It has some quite dark PS1 vibes. So we're working on that, and then an RPG called Echo Breaker, which again is kind of PS1 classic inspired. But for me, for the last 2 years, we've been working mostly on Birdcage, which has been a chance for me to really lean into a style of like PS1 era influenced modern music, which has been extremely fun because yeah, I just get to do like demo disc sounding stuff, but then the stuff we've been writing recently is like very near inspired. So getting to pull sort of more modern stuff in there. It's all very cinematic, but not in a kind of obviously cinematic way. So that's been amazing doing that and being able to design a video game too in like a much more meaningful way. You know, to
Hmm.
be there and to be able to say, let's do this and see those things happen in the video game is like, ah, yes, I'm actually doing game design. So it just is extremely rewarding to be able to do that. I feel very lucky. And yeah, Sentry, another game you mentioned that's in early access just now that should go 1.0 next year at some point. And I wrote a lot of music for that. When all said and done, there's probably more than 2 hours of music for that. And that is really sort of sci-fi, industrial metal. But there's a lot of like, I'm really proud of a lot of the ambient stuff I did on that. It pulls from stuff like, Phantasy Star Online and sci-fi games of the PS2 Dreamcast era. So yeah, it's quite a soundtrack of contrasts. So yeah, tons of video game stuff coming next year.
Hmm.
But in the imminent history, but I assume by the time this goes out,
I think
I
that's the plan.
think, yeah, yeah, I have an album called The Needs, which is my first solo album since 2019. And The Needs is a musical sort of continuation of the kind of stuff we were doing on Paradise Killer. And when I say we, I mean me and the other people that worked on the Paradise Killer soundtrack, which is Fiona Lynch, our vocalist, Fabian Hernandez, our sax player, Thomas Temple, our guitar player, and a friend of mine, Kyle, who helped me do the piano arrangement for the song Leaving, which is on Paradise Killer B-sides. So it's a project that has nothing to do with Paradise Killer and nothing to do with Kaizen Gameworks. It's purely a solo musical release, but thematically, it's city pop, jazz fusion, video game inspired music through a modern lens. So yeah, over the last, well, I think probably over a period of 6 months, we wrote and recorded 11 songs, um, in a much more collaborative way than we had previously. If Fiona co-wrote like all the vocals with me, we wrote a lot of lyrics together. She was there when I wrote a couple of songs. Like she contributed some songwriting too. So it's a much more collaborative thing than Paradise Killer was. We also added a horn section, which is exciting. So Ellen
There's going to be a ska
Anderson,
track, right? You
I
ska.
don't, that's the one thing maybe that I've not covered yet. I was never a checkered Vans guy. I've never owned a pair of checkered Vans. I guess there's still time, but
You're still
so we got
young.
yeah, young enough for ska maybe because a lot of the guys I know that are in the ska are not young. So we had Ellen Anderson, Nicholas Dallin, Simon Fransman. They were our horn section. They contributed to like more than half the tracks. Yeah, and it's just a really cool, really exciting collection of new songs that will be released on Black Screen Records on, I believe, November 14th. So,
Black Screen Records.
yes,
And sorry, you
who,
said November 14th.
yes. So, Black Screen, who I worked with on the previous two Paradise Killer releases, are also handling the release of this solo album. So, if you go and check that out, the vinyl and the tape are beautiful.
That's incredible. I'm
Yeah,
very excited for that. So this is big news, the needs.
yeah.
So you've been working on it for 6 months. how has it been sort of keeping that inside and not like expressing your joy and sharing this with everyone?
It was a really short, intense period of work, which made it easier to do. We managed to get funding through the National Lottery via Creative Scotland. So there's a funding body in Scotland called Creative Scotland who they match fund, I believe, National Lottery money, then they give that to artists. So we knew when we started the project that we wanted to try and get funding for it, but if we didn't, we would make do, essentially. So the funding allowed us to basically scope out quite a bit. So it generated a lot more work to be done over a shorter period because of kind of scoping up. But it also meant that, yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, honestly. Because the last album I wrote, Encounters, took 4 years to write and record because I was just doing it in the background. Whereas The Needs was 6 months of continuous work. It was all I was working on. So,
And so
so
on
yeah, I
this one,
mean, yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, like,
yeah.
the excitement phase is kind of starting now because I maybe spent the last 2 months just being a bit shell shocked that it was finished. So I'm kind of getting into the hype cycle now. So
Nice. And you're obviously the composer on it. You did a
mm,
lot of the writing. What other instruments
yeah.
did you play on it? What did you focus on mostly?
I played guitar, bass, synthesizers. I played some Iwi. I have a talk box. I did some talk box stuff on there. I did some backing vocals, and I did a lot of programming, obviously. And yeah, so a bunch of stuff. But I feel like the thing about the Needs is the name of the album, but it's also the name of our ensemble, I feel like. So the going back to the naming convention stuff from earlier, this album's coming out under the Epoch name because that's what people know me as in on streaming terms, right? That's where my audience is.
Hmm.
So it's an Epoch album, but the Needs is a much bigger deal than it has previously because everyone had much more involvement. Fiona especially.
Hmm.
So even though this is a solo release, I kind of see the Needs as like our band as well as the name of the album, which is fun
Yeah.
because it means that potentially we could play some shows. It's possible. Previously, I would have said there's no way I could play Paradise Killer music live, but it's definitely possible now.
It's in
So
the cards.
all it takes is to get booked at the right event, and I could get a band together and I could play, you know, some pretty exciting stuff live. I could play Last Dance XX live. That could
Come
happen.
to Canada. Do it.
Yeah,
Do it.
yeah, yeah. So, that's something for the future. But when we started on the Needs, that was one of our aims. Like, how do we take this project, this album, and spin it out into more opportunities? Because we all love working together and we love writing, city pop, jazz fusion, video game inspired music. Like it's just really fun and it's been great. And yeah, yeah, I've not written a record in a while. Like writing a record is very different from writing a soundtrack because it feels much more exposed because it's shorter, but also because you have to think about the complete product more. Because in
Hmm.
a 2 hour soundtrack, you can have some dips and peaks and troughs dynamically, but everything's happening, in a 45-minute wrapper
Hmm.
on a record.
You have to keep a leash on it almost.
Yeah, and it was good. There's some tracks we wrote that aren't on there because we had more than we needed. And that feels like a luxury to be able to do that. So that definitely helped, writing more than we needed and then filtering down to the best stuff.
So we can anticipate a B-sides record for this one as well.
There's plans. We have plans. Um, so the first single, Heart of the Moon, which again I believe is out now. The B side to that is a cover of Left Outside Alone by Anastasia. And I don't know what the worldwide popularity of that song is because I heard that Anastasia wasn't allowed to sell her music in America. Even though she's American, she had a contract that forbid her from selling her music in America. So,
This is all unfamiliar territory for me, so
right?
very
So yeah,
strange.
so it was fun getting to do, no spoilers, but we recorded a few covers that may appear at some point. So,
Why not?
yeah,
When in
yeah,
Rome.
we just got to do a bunch of cool stuff like that because we had the time and the resources to do it. So
Hmm.
yeah, really cool.
And so you said you're excited, the dust is settling, you've got
Yeah,
all these potential future prospects, including a North
yeah.
American tour, which means you're going to stop in Canada and play Last Dance XX.
I'd play in Canada, why not?
Why not? How does it feel now to be looking at this and think of the roads ahead of you? What's next? And having this big, broad vision of what to do.
The Needs is a really different album for me because it's so personal. Like normally I'm writing about concepts. Like I said, I'm writing about stuff that I think is cool. But The Needs is yeah, it's a very personal record, honestly, thematically and lyrically. It's a record about identity and about change, sort of set against the backdrop of summer changing to autumn. Because one thing about Scotland is we really only have 2 seasons. We have a week of summer and then we have 11 and a half months of autumn, is basically how it works. So the weather is such a massive part of Scottish well-being, mentally as well as physically. So, I thought it's a chance to write about my life and about things I've experienced and things, that I feel make up me. So it's kind of scary to have never written something personal and then to suddenly write something personal, especially because it's still quite veiled because it's set against, crazy music, right? But yeah, it's exciting to tap into that stuff, and I feel like I definitely want to keep doing that, is to try and write more music that's not necessarily just this is my job music. Because working on The Needs was a chance to work in the way that I wanted to. And the way that work intersects with art is obviously very complex. But yeah, working on The Needs was extremely gratifying, not only because I had got to work to my own timetable, got to be my own boss, I got to oversee other people. Yeah, I just got to make it more about my own life and use that as a way to sort of process stuff that had happened in my life too. So I think I'd definitely like to keep bringing that sort of stuff to future projects. But, you know, I will always keep my solo stuff going, I think. I got some really good advice about that. That if music is your job, don't just do work all the time. Try and find time for personal stuff that isn't necessarily tied up in I need to get paid to live. And I
Yep.
feel very lucky that I got to do that. I feel extremely lucky.
Well, that's fair. And
So
I'm
yes, some of
super
that.
excited. I'm
Yeah.
super excited to hear it. I'm super excited for you, man. I think this is huge news, and I think it's going to be an incredible product. So kudos
Cheers,
to you on that,
man.
and kudos to everybody. I hope you guys have a chance to celebrate and
Yeah.
enjoy the
I
work that
mean,
you've done.
I really, really like just want to give the people that I work with more of a chance to shine as well because they're all so talented. Like all the artwork for the album was drawn by Yanis, who's my development partner at Polygon Bird.
Mhm.
Because I love working with him. And like, I want people to be like, check this artwork out and check this saxophone solo out. Because yeah, there's so many talented folk out there. And I just, want to continue to be able to showcase that.
And now, the last time you spoke, you mentioned Goemon's Great Adventure, Mystical
Mm,
Ninja, as one of your influences. I'm
yeah.
curious. I want to chat more about the games that you played growing up because you said you're into video game music. Like, what kind of games were you into as well?
I was always a Nintendo kid. Like I had a Game Boy and I had a Super Nintendo and stuff, but my dad was kind of into computers, so he had like a Commodore 64, like an Amiga 600, and I think he had an Amiga 1200. So there was I got to play like a lot of British games as well growing up. Um, but like they were very much his. So I think the Super Nintendo was the first console I got that was mine. Um, And because my dad was someone that was into computers, he was very much into like the early days of video game piracy. So we had like a device that went into the Super Nintendo, and you could there's a really famous market in Glasgow called the Barras. So you used to be able to go to the Barras and buy copies of SNES games on a floppy disk and bring them home, and you buy a game for a fiver. So I got to play a lot of import games via that as well because yeah, because it was part of the video game culture at the time, I guess. I remember being in like the Wii shop in Glasgow where they sold Super Nintendo games on floppy disks, and there's like 200 people in it. It was an extremely big deal. And then that, culturally followed through with like chipped PlayStations. I don't know if that's really a thing for you guys, but like everyone at school had a chipped PlayStation. There'd be a guy in your school whose dad could get you chipped PlayStation games and stuff.
What?
So
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. Chipped, would that be like
just a
access?
mod chip that let you play backups on your PS1.
Okay.
Because your average Scottish person is just not affluent. Like none of us were affluent. And I like working class always makes it sound like I lived in a cave and worked in a pit and only ate bread. But everyone in the local community, they were people that didn't have a lot of money. So if you had a PlayStation, then made sense to get your PlayStation chipped and buy games illegally, I guess.
Right.
Which is
And
kind of funny. It's the normalized side of piracy, right? It's kids that really want to play the new FIFA game,
I mean, who doesn't? Like when these games
right?
are coming out, you want to play them.
I know. Had this extremely cursed. Final Fantasy IX is a 4 disc video game. I had a version that was 3 discs that had all the FMVs removed from it to get it down to 3 discs. So the first time I played Final Fantasy IX, I didn't see any of the FMVs.
Ugh,
So it's just like I don't
that's
understand
tragic.
what's happening. Yeah, yeah. It wasn't a great experience. But I have to be honest and say, like, if I hadn't played a lot of those games, like the UK never got anything. The amount of games that America would get that would just never make it to Europe because they didn't have the money to localize them or they didn't think they would go down well.
Mhm.
So like if I didn't have access to, gray market import stuff or, people outright being like, here's this Japan only game that I got from my mate's dad. Like I just never would have had such a wide palette of influence, which
Well,
is crazy to think about.
I find it so fascinating because I think the UK is responsible for like many of my favorite games. Like I think of Rare LTD. Like all of those are absolutely stunning games.
Yeah.
So it
Well,
does shock me.
they were expensive too, because I loved Rare as well. Donkey Kong Country 2 was like my favorite game when I was a kid, but games were so expensive. I would get a video game for my birthday. I would get a video game at Christmas
Hmm.
when it came to, actual full price games. Because the Nintendo 64 as well was just like inordinately expensive.
Oh, I remember how expensive it was, and even now it's still expensive to find cartridges for that console, right?
Yeah, like I've got a lot of games that still have the price stickers on them, and they were, 60, 70 pounds
Hmm.
in the 90s, and that's what games cost now. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, video games, I think, are still prohibitively expensive to a lot of people. But certainly for kids in the 90s, it was like, yeah,
Not a
kids
chance.
can't kids can't afford video games. So, yeah,
No.
crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so lots of talk about the UK, lots of talk about Scotland. I think I want to take this opportunity to ask about some of the cultural differences that we maybe experience. I'm here in Canada, across the world. I have to admit I'm rather ignorant of Scottish culture. So if you'll humor me, I've got a few questions to ask you about that.
Go ahead, please
Okay.
do.
So as I
Yes, we have
understand,
electricity, as you can see.
I
I think a lot of
I'm
people saw Braveheart in the 90s and thought it was a documentary.
the
So,
modern times thing.
yeah,
I saw that
maybe.
light come on and I was blown away.
I know
What?
it's wild.
What?
It's wild.
What? So Scotland is the home of golf. Do you golf?
Yeah. No, I do not. I think golfing is a sport for flatulent landlords, and I think they should remove all the fences from all golf courses and just let them be rewilded land. Because the thing I hate the most about golf courses is like you can't come here. Because I live next to a golf course, and I don't like that I have to walk past it every day, and I would need to apply to be there.
Hmm.
It's a big green space.
Yeah,
Like, so yeah, not a fan of golf at all. No, no, no.
fair enough. What is haggis and do you enjoy it?
Yes, I do enjoy haggis. It's yeah, it's basically lamb entrails, right? But it's mostly oats and spices, with a bit of offal in there. So it's not as it's not as terrible as like the sort of the headline makes it seem, but it is good. There are way more disgusting things to eat in Scotland than haggis. Haggis is small
What
time, so.
what else is disgusting? Please.
Um, we have like a lot of potted meat, which is really grim. Just like meat paste that you spread
Hmm.
on bread. It's like pate, but without the air of pomp and sophistication that pate claims to have. In the UK in general is pretty bad. Like in London, they eat jellied eels, which are,
Yeah.
literally it's eels and jelly. Thankfully, we don't have that, but we have some pretty weird stuff.
Still the
Haggis
same
is great though.
continent. Okay,
I
I
know.
keep hearing about haggis. I keep having people tell me it's good. Try it, try it. I'm like,
It's really good. It is really good. They make vegetarian haggis too. That's equally as delicious as normal haggis. So
what kind of entrails do they
because
use for that?
the well exactly they don't because the principle of it isn't let's make something disgusting. It's let's make something tasty. So but yeah, even like black pudding, which is like blood sausage, they
Mhm.
do a vegetarian version of that. That's also really good. So Scottish food is really good. By the way, it's amazing.
Okay. Well, I have to come there apparently to eat some food and
Yeah,
haggis.
we have a great there's a great Canadian place by us that just sells like 20 different varieties of poutine and a bunch of other stuff. It's run by actual Canadians as well, so that's why it's good. So
Okay. Well,
uh,
I love my poutine, so hopefully you enjoy it as
yeah,
much.
it took me a while to get behind the concept of cheese curds, but I kind of get it now. I think I'm there. I think it's fine.
We're slowly moving around the world and getting that out there. The beauty of
Yeah,
poutine.
yeah,
Um,
it's good.
d do you have a tartan?
I do not. I don't really know the lineage of my name. I think it's Eastern European or Central European, so there's no traditional topping tartan. But my mother's side of the family were Irish, so I'm pretty sure I could find something relevant if I had to.
Fair enough. Do you drink scotch? And if so, what kind of scotch would you recommend?
I do not drink whiskey. I drink tequila, honestly, is my favorite spirit at the moment. I'd much rather drink tequila than drink whiskey, but a lot of people here
Yeah.
are big whiskey guys, and they'd have better recommendations than I would. So
All right.
I'm
Well, do
not
you have a
even going to say I'm
recommendation
not.
for tequila?
Yeah. What's that? I can't remember what it's called. We have a bottle downstairs that we recently finished, but if I remember what it's called, I'll let you know. But yeah, tequila's good.
There's something charming
All of
about
it.
tequila. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Tequila and soda has recently become a
Mm.
favorite of mine. It's
And
good.
so what's the deal with Robbie Burns?
He, he's a poet, right? That's that's it. He's just a poet. He's a historic Scottish poet, one of our big famous national figures that wrote a bunch of like cool but also kind of quirky poetry. And then like that ties into stuff like our national holidays and that because we don't have like a massive, I guess, pantheon for lack of a better word of like international figures, but yeah, I guess some of our more historic figures like William Wallace, for example, maybe internationally known. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's yeah, Rabbie Burns is just one of Scotland's many famous literary heroes.
All right. Speaking of Latter-day Heroes, have you seen the Loch Ness Monster?
No, but I've been to Loch Ness, and it's really beautiful. It's great, but I don't think I mean, the thing is, Loch Ness is full of conger eels, and conger eels are massive and terrifying. So, if you went down there, you'd have a bad time. So there may as well be a monster, I guess.
Fair
But I'm
enough.
a big fan of like the sort of international lakes are connected by underwater passageways kind of stuff.
Ooh.
Like there's lots of theories about how like, a lake monster from this part of the world is the same lake monster because the lakes are connected. Big fan of that stuff. I mean, I don't believe it, but I think it's cool. So
Fair enough. And I'll admit I'm in the Pacific Northwest and I haven't seen Bigfoot yet, but I'm still holding out.
the
There's still
vibe,
hope.
yeah, the vibes in Northwest are insane. Like it feels so like storied in a way. Because I for a while I got into like Northwest Explorer stuff. reading about lots of people having a bad time trying to do advanced colonization. And it's like
Oh,
such a, yeah,
yeah.
it seems like such an unknown part of the world still. Like
Mhm.
even though people live there, it's like, yeah, pretty cool.
Oh yeah. No. Today of all days, I've got a lot to say about colonists. It's September 30th here in Canada. It's the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So celebrating our indigenous cultures who are um, who unfortunately suffered at the hands of a lot of colonizers, and so I do find that very interesting as well, and it is a big part of
yeah.
our history. But that's an aside. I'm gonna do
Yeah,
my
no,
thing a
no. I
little bit
mean,
later
it's
today. Yeah, sorry about
it,
that.
it absolutely. I mean, it absolutely fits into everyone's national identity, no matter where you're from. Like, I'm pretty sure, like a colonial past will have some effect on what your society's like now. I mean, even in like Scotland has its own colonial history as well. So
Hmm.
it's definitely, yeah, it's definitely a relevant part of like what makes up your identity now.
Hmm.
Because yeah, like I feel it's part of what makes up my Scottish identity. So yeah, I get it. It makes sense.
That's all a piece of it. And then
Yeah.
last cultural question here. What the hell is the appeal of bagpipes?
I'm not a big fan of bagpipes. I think like they're cool. The tactile process of like, I mean, playing a chanter, the thing you blow into is one thing, but the management of like the bag, it's cool. I'm not a great lover of the sound of bagpipes, and yeah, I think you can only play in two keys or
Hmm.
something. It's like one of those like fixed key instruments. So I'm not a great lover, but there is there's a black metal band called Graveworm that did a cover of Iron Maiden's Fear of the Dark that has a bagpipe solo in the middle of it, which I highly recommend checking out.
Okay, I will absolutely do that. Sweet. And that's all I've got to ask you about the cultural stuff. We'll move
Yeah,
back
you're
into
an
the video game
expert now.
stuff.
You know all about Scotland.
I'm basically Scottish now, so
Exactly.
yeah, I'll see you at the pub.
Yeah.
Um, Now I know it's something you discuss often, but I think we really
Mm.
do need to talk about Paradise Killer.
Yeah.
It's a game that was a huge success, and it launched you to a certain level of popularity, I would say, that
Yeah.
few composers actually do get to see. And so over the years, after its release, people are still in love with the music. How does it feel to have such a loyal, we'll say cult fan base, that still listens to that music?
It's really good. Like I don't it doesn't sort of affect me from an ego perspective, which I think is good. I think I'm lucky that it doesn't because I genuinely just feel thankful. Like I still get emails, like a couple emails a week from people who are telling me like, "Oh, I really love Paradise Killer music." And like I just try and give it my full attention because eventually it'll stop. And then I'll be like, "Oh, I miss when I was popular, right?" And I never want to feel like that. So I just want to feel like I'm giving it the attention I can now because I always reply to people. Like if someone sends me a message, like I'll always reply because it's just good to know that something I've made has connected with people and yeah, made their lives like a bit more fun, even for the hour they listen to it. Yeah,
Hmm.
it just makes me feel like super thankful that yeah, I got to do a bunch of hard work that was recognized because people work hard every day and they don't get any recognition at all. So yeah, I feel extremely lucky that I get recognition from people who enjoy my music. But at the same time, like I try not to let it take up too much space because I think I want to focus more on the art and getting gratification from making the art more than how people react to it because it can be a bit of a vicious cycle otherwise, maybe.
Right. Fair.
But yeah,
I think you
but
make
yeah, I
it for
mean, it's
yourself.
yeah, definitely. I try not to think too much about what people are going to think of stuff while I'm making it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm just really lucky that like Paradise Killer found an audience and that people enjoyed it and that that's an audience that are hopefully going to stick with me with other stuff. So
Well, you've certainly got some champions in your group, namely a fellow named Austin, who's pretty popular amongst video game vinyl collectors. I'm not sure
thanks,
if you're,
Austin. I really
yeah.
appreciate it. I was always very happy to get a message from him. I felt like I could say this man stands me, and how many people could say that, right?
Oh man, he's introduced so many people to your music. So really, that
Awesome.
guy's yeah, he's a
That's
huge
amazing
advocate.
because yeah, it's so hard to find time to do that, to be like, you should listen to my music. So if it wasn't for people doing that, then, what would musicians do, right?
Hmm. No, I bet you're
So yeah,
busy, and it's nice to have those folks in your base, right?
definitely. I'm so appreciative of anyone that takes time to listen or, recommend to other people.
Hmm. Now, recently I bought the About That
Mm.
Paradise Killer B-sides. Are there any tracks on there that you feel should have been included in the main soundtrack?
They all came around after it, so it's hard to say. I think they all offer something that's not available on the main soundtrack. The point of doing B-sides was to further explore those styles in a way that I hadn't done on the main soundtrack. So, for example, like About That is more a kind of 80s stadium, not really stadium rock, but it's definitely like I can see the stage in my head when I listen to that song. And then Unlimited Love is like kind of disco house tune. And then I Misunderstand is like Minneapolis inspired kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, yeah, all of it. Like if I'd had more time and more resource, I feel like I could just keep making that music forever because there's always a way to tie another style into it or combine a style with another. So, but yeah, so the original stuff on B-sides, I feel like any of it. And then the kind of bonus stuff it's really just fun bonus stuff. So,
And there's a lot of songs that have added lyrics in them on the B-sides tape. Now, the
oh yeah,
lyrics, I find them like they're cryptic, yet they're still clear enough to paint a picture of the themes of the game and the music.
yeah.
Uh, what was your process like for writing those lyrics?
Writing lyrics is probably the thing I'm least experienced at. Because the majority of my music's instrumental. And when I was in band, there was always a singer that wrote the lyrics normally. And actually, I guess a project we'll talk about in a minute, like I had to do a lot of lyric writing for. But yeah, this was a chance to sort of, I don't know, I just want the lyrics to be cool more than anything. Like, I
Mhm.
think to write a really simple, really memorable lyric is extremely hard. So to compensate for my natural lack of lyrical genius, like I try and make stuff cool. So I start from a place of let's write some cool lyrics, and then I think about what are the wider themes of Paradise Killer, and then what would sound cool with Fiona singing it, and kind of
Mhm.
applied those. Because like House of Bliss is a good example of a song that relates to Paradise Killer, but it's kind of about vampires. And there are no vampires in Paradise Killer because, yeah, there aren't. So, and I never have to tell anyone apart from you that, yeah, I was thinking about vampires when I was writing those lyrics. But
Now the world
it's
hears
just,
that.
yeah. It's just a kind of loose enough framework with that Paradise Killer brief that I could be like, yeah, just write something cool. And as long as you're not explicitly putting anything in there that doesn't make sense, it's fine.
Hmm. Not fair. And so I was curious, do you play any voices in Paradise Killer?
Yeah, I was Dr. Doom Jazz
You were
in
okay.
Paradise Killer.
I
I
thought so.
was. Which
Aha.
was fun. Like I'd love to do more voice acting. It's good fun.
Well, admittedly, he was my favorite character.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite character from the game?
Is it arrogant to say the character I voiced? It was good. It was good fun voicing him. Like he's such a Gigalithic is like our character designer on that game is so good at just being able to give just a really like jarring identity to a character. Like
Hmm.
I think all the character designs are really good, and I think you can tell because the C. Bedford stuff behind you on the wall is like those Gigalithics original designs like transfer over into a different style so easily
Hmm.
because
It was
there's just like
incredible.
so much cool stuff about them. So yeah, I was a big fan of Doom Jazz. A fun name as well, right?
That's an awesome name. Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
And then like even the Daybreaks I like, and Yuri was just a perfectly detestable character. It's quite
Yeah,
fascinating.
there was a nice spectrum of like likable and unlikable characters, and
Hmm.
hopefully people liked the guy that I voiced. So
Well,
well, he
I
was
hope.
romanceable, so you know.
Says something about you? What?
Maybe, maybe. Nah, I believe he was romanceable before I was involved in voice acting. So
Ah, you just provided the romantic voice. Uh,
exactly.
do you have a favorite track from the album?
Yeah. La Last Dance XX or Last Dance Double Cross. I call it different things sometimes. Is definitely my favorite track.
I raise my hands because that's my favorite as well. It blows
Oh,
me
really?
away every time I hear it.
That's good.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's good. I love hearing what people's favorite track is because I've probably had one email for every track now, which is
Hmm.
always exciting. But yeah, I love Last Dance. One of my favorite emails I got was someone was like, "Oh, I've written lyrics to this song for my boyfriend. If you'd like to hear them," and I was like, "I would love to." So it was
Oh,
really
that's
fun.
hilarious.
It was really fun getting to read stuff like that. I was like, "That's so cool." But yeah, I love
Yeah.
that tune. My overriding memory of it is like I'm really happy with the organ solo towards the end, but I recorded it on a MIDI controller with semi-weighted keys. So I was just basically punching a MIDI controller for 8 hours. And it was one of the later songs in the soundtrack. So I remember that being a sort of moment of like, hey, this is really good, but really weird.
Well, something about the chorus, it just like drives it. It's incredible. It's very good.
Yeah.
And like
I
I
I kind of
yeah.
I always pictured that tune as like kind of beach band. I don't know if you've ever been to like a beach bar where the band there is far too good to be playing on the beach. That's the kind of vibe I had in mind. So,
I mean, I think you nailed it. I've never been to an instance like that, but yeah,
well,
it turned out very
cheers.
well.
I'm really excited to hear that's your favorite track. That's cool. Yeah, that was one of the later ones as well. So that's good.
The fact that you keep up the energy all the way through the composing session, it's a lot.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good at like if any ever get feedback about a mix, it's like, oh, there's quite a lot going on here. I'm like, there could be more. So
Well, I mean, right off the bat, you said maximalist, so
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and so I don't have much more to ask or chat about with you here, but I do want to take a moment to do a little bit of a question period that I like to call 10 with Ty. So, all right, 10 with Ty, I like to ask 10 questions as fast as I can here and get as fast of answers as you're willing to provide. So, Barry Topping, what is your favorite console?
The Super Nintendo. Yes,
Fantastic. If
100%.
if you could have one video game vinyl or one video game soundtrack pressed on vinyl, what video game would that be?
It would be the Legend of Mystical Ninja or on the N64.
No?
Just a Mystical Ninja starring Goemon, sorry. I just call it
That.
Goemon 64, so it's hard to. But yeah, so I know that Ship to Shore had the rights to start making the first ones up there. There he
Oh,
is.
there it is. Yep, that's the one I was thinking of.
But yeah, Ship to Shore no longer exists. So
No, I know.
if you know who's got those rights, I will buy them and I will press the vinyls because it's not fair.
The world needs it. The world truly
I know.
needs it.
I know.
Question three. What other artist do you think that you are most comparable to?
Oh, oh, that's hard. Eh, I have no idea how to answer that. I don't think I've ever thought about that before. God. Eh, am I allowed to pass? I honestly have no idea.
We can come back to
Who-
that one at the end.
I can see who Spotify thinks I'm similar to. Maybe that's a cheap way out.
Go
Oh,
for it.
actually, I just when I opened up Spotify, I saw a picture of Peter Gabriel. I'm gonna say Peter Gabriel
Okay. Peter Gabriel.
because
Fantastic.
what a guy! What a guy!
Oh my God, he's amazing. He's an
I
incredible
know.
musician. Question four. What is your least favorite musical instrument and why?
Hmm. Probably the tuba because I used to play the tuba in high school, and I had to carry it to and fro high school every day.
Oh,
And what is a tuba doing in a concert band? Very little. So not a tuba guy. Sorry, tuba players. But the sousaphone exists, which is a cool version of a tuba. The euphonium exists, which is a small version of a tuba. Tuba's utility is struggling, I have to say.
tubas should be obsolete by this point, essentially. I pick up what you're saying.
Again, I know that I'm angering the tuba players out there, and I know at some point I'm going to need someone to play tuba on a soundtrack. So I'm sorry. I'm really
I won't
sorry.
tell them. Just make
That's
sure they don't
fine,
watch
but
this video.
I know.
Question five. What is your favorite variant of the Paradise Killer vinyl?
The original one, which is the hardest one to get, but it is the original vision, the blue and pink one. So
Blue and pink. Okay. Question six. Do you prefer contemporary or chiptune music in video games or modern VGM music?
some combination of all of them, honestly. The only thing I don't really like is like score. Score, the business term, I guess, that people like to use sometimes. Like, I'm not the kind of guy that would do that. Like, so it's not really something I'm interested in. But yeah, just anything that makes me go, "Ooh, that's nice."
Fair enough. Question seven. What was the first video game that you played?
It was 1942, I believe, on the Commodore 64. But for years, I thought it was Bomb Jack because you were a plane, and I just thought you shot bombs. So the link in my head was that, oh, that's Bomb Jack. But yeah, I believe the first video game I ever played was 1942 on Commodore 64.
All right. Question eight. What is a song that is a guaranteed to make you cry?
Um, Probably Emil from Nier, any variant of Emil's theme from the first game. Pretty much anything on the Nier soundtrack, honestly. It all hits pretty hard. Even Snow and Summer, like the first track, sometimes gets me a bit. Which is crazy because the start of the game is just like salt. There's salt everywhere. You have a steel pipe. There's just something about Nier, right? There's just something about it.
So question nine. If you could play any instrument, an instrument that you don't currently play, what instrument would that be?
Drums, because I would love to play drums. My plan is to buy a drum kit very soon, and then my dream will become a reality.
And question 10, what is your desert island game? If you could bring one game to a desert island to have with you for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I don't want to say Birdcage by Polygon Bird Games because that feels cheap. So probably Final Fantasy VII, a game that I have completed more times than any other and have yet to get bored of. So yeah, I think Final Fantasy VII probably.
Still holds its allure. And so that is 10
Does.
questions. I thank you for your time on that. For bonus points, can you describe in 3 words your career so far?
Very good fun.
Beautiful. Great choice of 3 words. And that is 10 with Ty. Thank you so much for playing along on that one.
Apart from the stuff about tuba players, I think we were fine. I don't think there was anything that bad. And also the earlier stuff about playing pirated video games when I was a kid. I think apart from those 2 things, I think we're fine.
You're
Right,
gonna live
it
by
is
what you say.
fine. It's
It is
definitely
fine.
fine. It's fine.
I think it's, oh yeah, I think it's fine.
It's fine.
It is what
But,
it
you know,
is.
when they show
Yeah.
this video in court and I have to see us both saying, that's fine. I'll maybe not feel so good, but
Well, let's just not get to that point. Don't find a reason to go to court, essentially.
honestly, there are a lot of soundtracks that make me cry. The Undertale soundtrack, pretty much every single track on the Undertale soundtrack has the capacity to make me cry if I really wanted to.
Well, it's beautiful. Of course.
Yeah, there's so much. Like I really had to think there. Like the
Yeah.
Xenoblade title screen's another one. There's so many, so many.
And now it really caught you off guard to see like the artists that you think you're most comparable to.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea. I don't really know. I can't think of anyone else.
To dig into that a bit more, why do you think Peter Gabriel?
Just because he's class, and like I felt like he did a lot of quite different stuff. I mean, he maybe if I don't think I'm similar to him, Peter Gabriel's someone I could definitely aspire to. Like he did so much for music technology. He did so much for music in general. You
Mhm.
know, he did all that WOMAD stuff. He's someone that's continually reinvented himself and has continually championed other musicians. I think it's very hard to say anything bad about Peter Gabriel. He's had such a wildly prolific career.
He seems
So
like
yeah, I
just a
think I would.
genuine guy too.
Yeah, he's a legend. Like he's an absolute legend. I love all his stuff. It's class. So
Clearly a Genesis fan.
yeah, big time Genesis fan. I'm like a more of a I prefer Phil Collins' Genesis, but I think Peter Gabriel's solo stuff is like far outstrips Phil Collins' solo stuff. So
Fair enough. And,
nuanced.
sorry, just going back, you did mention artists that you would love to work with way earlier, and that was like, Donald Fagen from Steely Dan. If you
Yeah.
could work with, I know, dream, dream big. If there's any video game composer that you could work with at this point in time that, feel would be more attainable than, say, Donald Fagen, who would that be?
Oh, I don't know. There are a lot of contemporaries that I would choose, but I'm really always tempted to say I love Xenoblade so much. It's probably my favorite game series, and Xenoblade has like 4 or 5 composers. So this guy Kenji Hiramatsu, who composed a bunch of stuff for all the Xenoblade games, I think he just has such a incredible ear and such a aspirational approach to writing music because all his stuff is all very big and it's like huge and sort of dares to push like the future connected the Xenoblade Definitive Edition DLC expansion that just has like an 8-minute disco tune for the battle music. It's like I love that. So yeah, Kenji Hiramatsu is probably my current musical hero, but
Okay.
yeah, just anyone, like even like my friends, are some of the people I want to collaborate with the most. But it's less exciting if I just say a name of someone that you don't really know. So
But it's wholesome if it's a friend. I get
yeah, I
that.
mean, I love working with friends. The thing is as well, the minute you work with someone, they're essentially a friend anyway. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough.
I'd love to keep collaborating because the needs came around from like the lack of collaboration that went on during the pandemic, right? It was
Hmm.
very important to me that I started working with people again musically because it can be quite isolating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so it's good that you were able to get back on that and get in
yeah,
there and work with folks. Now, if you could work on any video game franchise, like if you were offered the opportunity to come in and support on a soundtrack, what series would you most wish it to be?
yeah. Goemon definitely. Gambari Goemon. I think if that ever got a modern revival, I think I could do it.
And it should. It should.
And yeah, it should. I mean, I really like Bakaru, the Good Feel game that just came out. Because I mean, that's really a it's a spiritual successor, but it also has people that worked on Goemon on it.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's great that that exists, but if they ever give Goemon another shot, like that's a job that I know I would absolutely kill because I know that music inside out. So
That's
we'll
good
see.
music. I recently just
It's
played
a
through it.
oh nice. It's so good, man. It's so good. It's yeah, it's just one of Konami's many neglected IP, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it
But
sees a resurgence.
yeah, I know they did a thing a while ago where they would I know that they were people were like pitching for IPs. And I know that they had a competition, I think, where the guy that won, I think, wanted to do like a Twin Bee thing, and nothing ever came of it. So I don't know. I don't know what the reluctance at Konami is to push out more remasters at a time when, everyone else is doing that.
Right.
But do it. They have the bench at Konami is so deep for excellent IPs that need a revival.
They need to do it and they need to contact you for the music.
Yeah. Bring back Poi Poi. Bring back Azure Dreams. I could
Uh,
go on.
you
I
could.
won't.
But yeah, well,
Just make
unfortunately,
make a Tiny Toons game again. Just make cool shit.
Barry, I wanted to thank you on air here. Thank you so, so much for taking the time to chat with me. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
telling us about your upcoming release here. And that is The Needs, which should be available November 15th through Black Screen Records.
Yep,
Fantastic news.
it will be on streaming, and you can pre-order the cassette or the vinyl now, and that should arrive hopefully the same day it launches on streaming. And yeah, check out our new single, Heart of the Moon, which is available again on all good streaming platforms. And yeah, please look forward to it.
Fantastic. Anything else you want to add?
Just thanks for chatting to me, man. It's been more than a year since we talked last, isn't that
That's pretty
scary?
wild. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty
Felt
sure
feel like
last time
yesterday.
I was like, yeah, I've been listening to lots of Queensryche, not really been doing much else. So it's nice to come back and be like, oh yeah, I've been working on tons of stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting on hundreds of hours of music here, so yeah, let's release some of it.
Yeah, and I'm
But yeah,
stoked that you were willing to chat with me about it because I mean this is huge news. I think this is fantastic, and so
cheers,
it is
man.
an honor to be able to chat with you about it, and I do so very much appreciate it. So
Well, thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate chatting to you and for everyone watching. Thank you very much for giving me your time. Really
amazing.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Barry.